We begin today the Gemara on the Tes Vav Amud Beis, 11 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. The Gemara comes back to the Mishnah, where it said, Ein Donen Chulut. The Mishnah here counts different things that can only be judged by a Bezdin of 71, which is the Sanhedrin, Hagdaila, and the Beis HaMikdash. And the first thing the Mishnah says is, you can't judge a whole Shevet unless you have a Bezdin of 71. So the Gemara will here discuss, we're judging the whole Shevet for what? What happened with the Shevet? So the Gemara, Ein Donen Chulu, Hai Shevet, the Chot B'mai. This Shevet, they sinned. The entire Shevet sinned with what? What are they being judged for? If you'll say, the story here is Shevet Shechil Es HaShabbos. A Shevet that was Machal Shabbos, for example, one Aveda. And the question is whether they're all Chayiv Skila for Chilul Shabbos or not. And on this the Mishnah is saying you have to have a Bezdin of 71. Says the Gemara, this is not true, because Eimed the Palagrachmane ben Yechidim Lemerubin. Where do we find that the Torah makes a distinction between individuals that are being judged or many that did an Aveda together and are being judged, that there's a difference, whether it has to be a Bezdin of 23 or a Bezdin of 71. Le'inyan Avedas Kechavim. We find this only regarding Avedas Zara. And this is the halacha of Irani Dachatz, which the Gemara will bring up soon, that when you're judging a whole city that served Avedas Zara together, so there has to be a Bezdin of 71. But Bishar mitzvahs, regarding any other mitzvahs, Chilul Shabbos or anything else, Mi Polik, do we ever find that there's a distinction whether you're judging an individual or you're judging many together? There's no distinction. So why would we say that the whole Shevet that was Machal Shabbos, they need a Bezdin of 71? So Ella must be, what's the pshat in the Mishnah? It's taka regarding Avodah Zarah, b'Shevet shehudach, a Shevet that was diverted into Avodah Zarah, and they're being judged for this. That's what we're talking about over here. But the question though is, L'meimre, shall we say that when the entire Shevet is served Avodah Zarah and they're being judged, that you need a Bezdin for 71, the Bedine, the Rabbim, the Ninalei, then in such a case, they're going to be judged like many that served Avodah Zarah together. But the question on this is, Kaman, who is the Tana of our Mishnah? Like Rabbi Yeshia and like Rabbi Yonasan. It doesn't follow either of these two opinions, Rabbi Yeshia or Rabbi Yonasan, that we have in the Braisa about this. The Tanya, we learned in the Braisa regarding the Irani Dachas. Again, Irani Dachas is a city in Eretz Yisrael where the inhabitants of the city all serve Avodah Zarah. So what's the number of the people that make up a city? What's the minimum? What's the maximum? At kama oisen Irani Dachas. What is that number of the city of a Irani Dachas? Miyud v'ad kuf. From 10 people, that's the minimum for it to be considered a city, until 100 people. That's the maximum that it should be called a city. After that, if it's more than 100 people, then it's not a city. Then it's just called a tzibur. It's a different category, beyond the city. That's the number, 10 to 100. David Rabbi Yeshia, that's Rabbi Yeshia's opinion. Rabbi Yonasan says, mikuf has to be from 100 people, va'ad rubei shel shevet, until the amount of the people that are living in the city, if it's up to the majority of a shevet that served Avodah Zarah. But if it's more than that, now Rabbi Yonasan, even Rabbi Yonasan that says that Irani Dachas is up to even the majority of a shevet in a city, that can be tens of thousands of people, that they're all in the city and serve the Avodah Zarah, but loy ka'ama ala rubai, that's only if it's the majority of the shevet. Then they're judged by a Bezdin of 71, as the halacha is by Irani Dachas. Aval kuloi, but if it's the entire shevet that served the Avodah Zarah, so then loy ama. Then we don't apply that. And over here we say that then they're a tzibur, they're not anymore a city, and a tzibur is going to be judged, each one is judged separately for what the Avodah Zarah that he serves. And the judgment is different. By Irani Dachas, the punishment is, if I remember correctly, Sayif. That's the Misa there. Mashenkim, by a person that serves Avodah Zarah as an individual, it's skila, it's a different punishment, b'chlal. So back to the question here regarding Shevet, what did the Mishnah mean when it said that you're judging the entire Shevet and they're being judged by 71? If we see that according to both opinions, when it's the entire Shevet, they're not judged by 71. So the Gemara brings a few pshatim. The first pshat is Amar Rav Masna. Rav Masna says the din of the Mishnah is totally different. Hacha benasi Shevet shechata askinan. What we're talking about is the leader of the Shevet sinned in whatever Aveda it may be, where he's liable to the punishment of death, and he has to be judged, and he's judged by 71. Because then, where do we learn this out? That a Nasi is judged by 71? Because mi lo yomar Rav Ada bar Rava, didn't Rav Ada bar Rava say, and this is going to be quoted here later in the Amud regarding a different matter, that it says by Moshe Rabbeinu when Yisro gave him the advice to appoint other judges, and then it says that Kol Hadover Hagadol Yeviu Elecha, that any great matter will be brought to you, to Moshe Rabbeinu. So Rabbi Barav darshan this word Dover HaGodel, that what it means is Dvarov, Shel Godel, that if there's a matter that pertains to a great individual, that has to be brought to Moshe Rabbeinu himself. So Hainami, here as well, if we're talking about the Nasi of a Shevet that sinned, and we're judging if he should be given death or not, Godelhu, he's the great person, he's the leader of the Shevet, and therefore he's judged by 71. Now how we learn this from Moshe Rabbeinu, because as we'll see later here in the Daf, the Gemara says that Moshe Rabbeinu is equivalent to 71. The Gemara said it already also, it said it before, and I think in the Mishnah it said that Moshe Rabbeinu himself is equivalent to 71. The Eibishter appointed him to judge Yidden like the Sanhedrin. So since it says here, Dover HaGodel, you bring to Moshe, that means a Nasi, which is the Gadol of the Shevet, when he's judged, he has to be judged by 71. That's what the Mishnah meant when it said that the Shevet, meaning the Nasi, is judged by 71. Another Pshat the Gemara says, Ula Amar Rabbi Lazar, Ula said in the name of Rabbi Lazar, Beboin al Iske Nachleis, that what our Mishnah is speaking about is when there is a dispute regarding matters of inheritance in Eretz Yisrael. And so this is what Shevet means, that there's the Shevet that inherits their territory in Eretz Yisrael. If there's a dispute that comes up about this, you have to have a Bezdin of 71 to settle this. How do we know this? And we compare it to the way Yidden inherited and divided the territory in Eretz Yisrael in the beginning. Just like in the beginning when they divided Shivim ve'echad, it was done with the 71, the Sanhedrin that was involved in this. Afkan Shivim ve'echad. So too a dispute that comes up later has to be settled by the Sanhedrin, by the Bezdin of 71. That's the Shevet, a matter that pertains to the Shevet and the inheritance. But the Gemara asks on this, if that's where you're learning it out from, you're comparing it to when they originally came into Eretz Yisrael. So if so, kalfi, just like in the beginning when they divided Eretz Yisrael, it was done with a kalfi. They had the box with the papers in it, and they made a lottery. And then there was also the Urim V'Tumim, that's the Urim V'Tumim, which is the shame of the Eibishter that's in the Choshen, and the letters of the Urim V'Tumim stick out and shine out to tell us what territory every Shevet gets. And B'chol Yisrael, and you have to have all Yidden, which refers to the Sanhedrin, Hagdaila, that had to be there when they divided Eretz Yisrael. So maybe I should say, Afkan, so too anytime, if you're comparing it to the way it was in the beginning, so too later, any dispute regarding inheritance, you should have to have the Kalfi, the lottery, and the Urim V'Tumim, and B'chol Yisrael, and the whole Sanhedrin. How can you compare it to the way it was in the beginning? So then it's going to be much more complicated. So therefore the Gemara says, Elo, Machvarta, therefore the best pshat is to go back to what we said before, Kid Rav Masna. Like Rav Masna said, that we're talking about the Nasi of a Shevet that's being judged, but not about a territorial dispute in Eretz Yisrael. That does not have to be judged by 71. Another pshat the Gemara brings in the Mishnah, Ravina Amar, Ravina says, going back to the original pshat that the Gemara was thinking to say, La'olam b'shevet shehudach. The pshat of the Mishnah is, it's an entire Shevet that is serving Avodah Zarah. And a question on this was that Bedine the Rabim Daininan Lei. Sorry, this is read as a wonder. Bedine the Rabim Daininan Lei. In a case where the entire Shevet was diverted into serving Avodah Zarah, are they going to be judged like the Rabim, like Eira Nidachas, which is judged by 71? The Gemara before brought both Rabbi Yonasan and Rabbi Yeshua hold that if it's the entire Shevet, they're not judged by 71. So the Gemara says, yes, they will be judged by 71. Afagav the Katlinan biyochid, even if they're going to be judged by the punishment of an individual that served Avodah Zarah, meaning that what's going to be the actual punishment, the misa of skila, like an individual that served Avodah Zarah, and not like the Irani Dachas, which is judged by a different misa, by the misa of Sayef. So yeah, they get judged as an individual, but nevertheless, Beidine de Rabim Daininale. Who is the one, however, that has to judge the entire Shevet? It has to be the Bezdin of 71. These 2 points are not necessarily connected. The fact that Rabbi Yonasan and Rabbi Yeshua said that they're not judges in Yer Neidachas is true. But who is the one that judges them? It still has to be a Bezdin of 71. And the Gemara brings the source for this distinction, because Mi loy Amar Rab Chama Bar Yosi Amar Rab Yeshua hasn't been said regarding the Irani Dachas, in the name of Rabbi Yeshua. From where do we know that it has to be the Bezdin of 71? Because it says, Va'itzeisa, it's a Isha'u, or it's a Isha'i v'gaimer, you should take out the man or the woman it's going to be judged for Misa, and it says, you take him out, El Sha'arecha, to your gates to judge them. So you're judging an individual. So from there we learn out, Ish v'isha, if it's one man or one woman, Atamaitza l'sharecha, you take it out to your gates, meaning to the Bezdin of 23 that's in the city, by your gates. But v'yatamaitzi kala ir kula l'sharecha. But if it's a ir nidachas, it's the entire city that served Avodah Zarah, they can't be judged by the Bezdin that's by the city, by the gates of the city. That's from where we learn out that it has to be a bezdin of 71. So if so, Hochanami here as well, when it's the entire shevet that served Avodah Zarah, Ish v'isha atamaytze l'sharecha. A man or a woman is judged by the bezdin of 23 that's in the gate of the city. But v'atamaytze kol hashevet kula l'sharecha. But if it's the entire shevet, then you have to judge it by the bezdin of 71. So true, the actual punishment will be as individuals. The halacha vir hanidachas does not apply in this case because it's not a ir. It has to be a ir hanidachas, which is either from 10 to 100 or 100 to the reiv of the shevet. And this is out of that category. But nevertheless, they're not ish v'isha. So therefore, they're not judged by the bezdin, which is in the city, 23, but rather by the bezdin of 71, by the sanhedrin gedela. The next thing it said in the Mishnah is loy esnavi asheker, to give the punishment to a false prophet. It also cannot be done by a bezdin of 23. It has to be by a bezdin of 71. What's the source for this? Omer Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina Asya. We learn out the following Gzeir Shava. Hazade mizakim mamrei. The term that it says by the Navi Sheker, Rashi brings the pasuk. It says ach hanavi asher yazid, a navi that deliberately says false prophecy. And by the Zakim Mamre it says va'ish asher yaseh bezodain. The Zakim Mamre, we had it before, is the elder of a bezdin of the 71 that is rebelling, that's disagreeing with their judgment, and he's paskening and acting differently. So we learn out the two terms of hazada that it says from the Zakim Mamre, Mala Alon b'shivim ve'echad, just like by the Zakim Mamre that rebels against the bezdin, he's rebelling against the bezdin of 71. Because over there it says that he comes, v'kamto v'alisa, that he comes to the place, to Yerushalayim, to the Beis HaMikdash, where there's the bezdin of 71. Avkam b'shivim ve'echad. So too over here, the punishment of the Navi Sheker is with 71. The Gemara asks on this Gzeir Shava, how could you learn from here? V'ha ha'gzode ki ksive b'kitalo d'chsive. By the Zakim Mamre, there's two parts of it. There's 2 points. There is the Aveda that he did, which is the rebellion. That Aveda of the rebellion is only against the bezdin of 71, as it says clearly, V'kam tov alisa. But then there's the actual punishment. And the punishment over there, when it says in the pasuk, V'ha'ish asher yaseh bezodain, and it's referring to his punishment. And there, the punishment that's given to him is actually not necessarily by the bezdin of 71. Even by a bezdin of 23 in the city, you can give him the misa that he deserves for rebelling against the bezdin. So again, the term of bezadain that it says by the Zakim Mamre, it says it by the punishment that when he's put to death. Even though his rebellion that he's chayav misa for is only the rebellion against the bezdin of 71, but the actual misa is by a bezdin of 23. So if you're learning from there, so over here by the Navi Sheker as well, his misa should also be only by a bezdin of 23.
Judged by 2 bezdins?
No, the rebellion, the Aveda, is against the bezdin of 71, but he's judged by a bezdin of 23 that gives the misa. So Elam Rish Lakish. The different Rish Lakish says there's a different Gzeir Shava. Gomar, he learns out the term that it says davar me'amra asay. We learn out the term that it says by the Navi Sheker, that the Navi Sheker says the false nevuah. So the lashon of the pasuk is davar achanavi yazid. What's the lashon of davar that it says in the pasuk? So it says hachanavi yazid ledaber davar b'shmi, and it says also by the Zakim Mamre also the term davar. That the lashon of the pasuk is, where is it? Just a second. Vasisa al pia davar asher yigid l'chom anamakam asher yivchar. So it uses the term davar by both of them. That's mehamra asay, and that actually it says by the aveda that he did. The davar is the rebellion. The rebellion is against the bezdin of 71. So we're learning from what it says by the aveda over there, davar, that's dafke against the bezdin of 71. And over here, regarding the Navi Sheker, it's speaking about the punishment, that it's also compared to that bezdin of 71, that he's punished only by them, by the sanhedrin gedela. That's what we're learning it out from. But now the Gemara asks, if that's the case, so you just learned out Gzeir Shava comparing a Navi Sheker to the Zakim Mamre that he's punished by the bezdin of 71. If so, now you have that Gzeir Shava, so turn around the Gzeir Shava. V'lahade Zakim Mamre, v'ligmar hazada min Navi Sheker. So now let's go back to the Gzeir Shava that we brought before, and let's learn out the hazada that just like by the Navi Sheker you punish him by the bezdin of 71, so to the term hazada by the Zakim Mamre, which is written by his punishment, that punishment should also be only with a bezdin of 71. So the Gemara answers, Dava Davar Gomer. This Gzeira Shava that we just brought of Dava Davar, that's a Gzeira Shava that we have a tradition, a halacha l'Moshe Misinai, that it's a Gzeira Shava that we dash in it. Hazada, that original Gzeira Shava that the Gemara brought, Loi Gomer. There's no tradition for that Gzeira Shava. A Gzeira Shava is a drasha that you cannot make up yourself. You can't just take any two words in Torah and compare them and say, oh, there's a word here, there's a word there, let's darshan. Because then you can take, the Ramban says, if so, you can take any and many words in Torah and start comparing things. There has to be a Kabbalah for that. A Kal V'chaimer, here Rashi says, a Kal V'chaimer is something that you can darshan yourself. But a Gzeira Shava, you have to have a Kabbalah for. Here Rashi says that this is a concept you always have in the Gemara. This is the halacha revachas b'Yisrael. That's Rashi's expression here. This is always the klal that's brought in the Gemara, that a Gzeira Shava you can't make up on your own, a Kal V'chaimer you can. So over here, the Gzeira Shava of Davar is a Gzeira Shava to teach that by Novi Sheker he's punished by a bezin of 71. But then to use the Gzeira Shava of Hazada to say that Azaka Mamre is punished by a bezin of 71, we have no tradition for such a Gzeira Shava. Then the Mishnah said, "V'lo is Kohen Gadol." A Kohen Gadol that's being judged cannot be judged only by a bezdin of 71. Minan and Mili, what's the source for this? So here the Gemara brings what it already brought before, the statement of Ravada Barave. Omar Ravada Barave, the Omar Kra, the Pasuk says by Moshe Rabbeinu that Kol Adavar Gadol Yavir Elecha, that a great matter will be brought to you. What does it mean? Dvarov Shel Gadol doesn't just mean a great matter. It means the matter pertaining to a Gadol, meaning that if there's a issue with the Kohen Gadol and he has to be judged, so it has to be brought, just like in front of Moshe Rabbeinu, has to be brought in front of a bezin of 71, like Moshe Rabbeinu that was equivalent to 71. But the Gemara brings in a braise where it says the pshat of Dover HaGadol different, and more the literal understanding. Meisvei, the braise says, Dover HaGadol, what does it mean when it says that a great matter is brought to Moshe Rabbeinu? It means Dover Kasha. It means that it will be a difficult matter that any of the other judges cannot figure out. So you come to Moshe Rabbeinu. That was the advice of Yisrael, right? Yeah, that's a simple pshat. Now the Brisa goes on to explain and to prove this. You say that the word Dover HaGadol means a difficult matter that only Moshe Rabbeinu could figure out. Maybe it means, like the Gemara Darshan before, that if it's a matter that pertains to a Gadol, that should be brought to Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Brisa says, but Keshehu Aimer. There's another pasuk later on that says, Es hadavar hakasha yiviun el Moshe, that a difficult matter will be brought to Moshe. Haridavar kasha Amar. So you see clearly in the pasuk that this is the point there. That when it says Davar Gadol, it means, like it says afterwards, Davar kasha. That if it's a difficult matter, it's brought to Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what it means. It doesn't mean the matter pertaining to a Gadol. So we have a clear Brisa that's saying that it's not, that it doesn't refer to a Gadol, a Kohen Gadol. But the Gemara says it's machlokes. Who the Omar ki hay Tana. The drasha of Ravada Barave is like what another Tana said. The Tanya in another Brisa it says Davar Gadol. What does it mean when it says Davar Gadol? Dvarov Shel Gadol. This Brisa actually says no. It means the matter pertaining to a Gadol. This Brisa also clarifies. You say it means Dvarov Shel Gadol, the matter pertaining to a Gadol. Maybe the term Davar Gadol just means a difficult matter. So this Brisa says, no, actually we say, Keshehu Aimer, Hadavar HaKasha. Once it says later in the Pasuk that a difficult matter is brought to Moshe Rabbeinu, Hadavar Kasha Amar. So it already says that a difficult matter should be brought to Moshe Rabbeinu. So Hamani Mekayim Davar Gadol. So what does it mean here when it uses a different term and it repeats again and it says Davar Gadol, that a great matter is brought to Moshe? It means Dvarav Shel Gadol. Here it means something else. It means the matter pertaining to a Gadol, which is a Kohen Gadol, or as the Gemara actually dashed before, it could be regarding a Nasi. So the Gemara goes back to the first Brisa. The first Brisa, Terei Kroi Lamali. Why do we need two different psukim that are saying the same point? How could the first Brisa say that when it says Davar HaKasha and when it says Davar Gadol, they both mean the same thing, that a difficult matter is brought to Moshe Rabbeinu? So why does it say it twice? The second Brisa is right, that it shouldn't be repeating this. And says the Gemara, no, it's not a question. Chad litzavo ba'alme, or let's take out the word ba'alme. The first time it says it is the tzava. Tzava means when Yisrael was commanding, meaning he was giving his suggestion of how things should be set up. That there'll be judges, and then it will be a difficult matter. It will be brought to Moshe Rabbeinu. That was the first time it says it. And v'chad la'asiyah. The second time it says it in the pasuk, it's describing how it was actually implemented. That that a difficult matter is brought to Moshe. So it's not a repetition. It's in the story, once by the suggestion and once when it was implemented. Now, according to the opinion of the second Brisa, that says that we do Darshan Davar HaGadol as a different point. So why wouldn't the second Brisa say, like we just explained, one is by the suggestion and one was by the implementation? Because in Cain, if that's the case, why is there a switch in the word here? Lichtoiv, oy gadol gadol, oy kasha kasha. And let it use the same term both times. Whether use the term gadol or use the term kasha, but it's the same point. It's just one by the suggestion of Yisrael, one by the implementation. Why is it using a different term here? So therefore, this teaches us my gadol or my kasha. Why did it once use the word gadol and another time the word kasha? Shmami not tarti. So from this I could learn out that there's a second point of here. It's switching the term to tell you that you have to learn out from this that any matter pertaining to a gadol, like a Kohen Gadol or a Nasi, is brought to Moshe Rabbeinu, and the same in the future generations is brought to a Bezdin of 71. Rabbi Lazar asked the following shaila. So we said that any time the Kohen Gadol is being judged, so he for Misa, so it has to be brought in front of the Bezdin of 71. So the shaila now is Shaydai shel Kohen Gadol. How about if it's the ox of the Kohen Gadol that gored someone and killed someone? So Bekama, in front of how many judges does this have to be judged? So we had before regarding this halacha that a person's ox that gored and killed someone, what happens? The ox itself has to be stoned to death. And that has to be judged by a bezdin of 23. And the Gemara learned it out before from the pasuk where it says, Kemisas habaylim, kach misas asher. It says, Gamba, all of you must, that we compare, just like the owner, if he would be put to death, then it's a bezdin of 23. So too the ox has to be with a bezdin of 23. So now the question is, what do we say over here? Do we say, Lemisas baylim didei medaminale? This ox that belongs to a Kohen Gadol, we compare it to his owner. Just like his owner, the Kohen Gadol, is judged by a bezdin of 71, so to the ox that's put to death would have to be judged by a bezdin of 71. That comparison that we learned from that pasuk is that we compare it to any yid, any owner that would be judged by a bezdin of 23, and therefore by the Kohen Gadol it's the same thing. Now the Gemara does not resolve this shaila, but it makes an observation and says, Amar Abaye said, since the question that was asked that Rabbi Lazar only asked the shaila b'negei to the ox of the Kohen Gadol that Gordon killed, so Miklal, from this I understand, the memoinai pshitale. If it's a money matter that the Kohen Gadol is involved in, any money dispute with his friend, that the Kohen Gadol is not judged by a bezdin of 71. He's judged by a bezdin of 3, just like anybody else with a money matter. That there was no shaila about. So the Gemara says on this, yeah, of course, pshita, it is obvious. Regarding a money matter, of course the Kohen Gadol is going to be judged just like anybody else. This whole drasha we brought before is only pertaining to an issue of life and death. Over there, the Kohen Gadol is judged by 71. So the Gemara says, no, ma'u deteme. It's a chiddush, because I would think to say, since the source in the pasuk, what does it actually say? Kol hadover hagadol. It says any matter pertaining to a great person like a Kohen Gadol should be judged by Moshe Rabbeinu. So I would think kol dvarav shel gadol. Any matter, even if it's a money dispute where the Kohen Gadol is involved, it should have to be brought to Moshe Rabbeinu or to a bezdin of 71. Kamash Malon, therefore it says, no, that it's only a matter of life and death, but not a money matter. There, he's like everybody else, and he's judged only by a bezdin of 3. The next thing the Mishnah said, that if you want to go out to fight a war, and this is a mulchama of a reshus, to expand the territory in Eretz Yisrael, beyond what the borders of Eretz Yisrael are any mulchama of reshus, you have to have the agreement, it's according to the bezdin of 71 as well. What's the source for this? So Rabbi says, the pasuk, when it speaks about the Yidden entering into Eretz Yisrael, and then over there it says, Elazar HaKohen is the one that brings Yidden into Eretz Yisrael. So it says, V'lefnei Elazar HaKohen yamoid, that the Yidden will come and stand in front of Elazar HaKohen. Now the full pasuk over there it says, V'shala b'mishpat ha'urim lefnei Hashem. They're going to ask by the Urim v'tumim. And then it says, Al piv yetzuv, al piv yavoyu. And then the pasuk goes on to say, Hu, v'chol b'nei Yisrael itay, v'chol ha'eda. So he, Yeshua that is, and all the Yidden, and the entire congregation. What are all these words in the pasuk referring to? So Rabbi Vo says, we darshan from this pasuk as follows. Who means Zeh Melech? Who is he? It goes on Yeshua. He's a king. He was the king then at that time of the Yidden. So it has to be, they have to ask his advice before they go out to a Melchemes Reshus, the king. Then it says, V'chol b'nei Yisrael itoi. All Yidden also have to be along. Who's the V'chol b'nei Yisrael? Zeh Mashuach Melchama. This was the representative of Yidden for war, for fighting war. This was someone that was anointed for this purpose to lead Yidden into war. He has to be advised with also before they go into war. And then it says V'chol ha'eda, and the entire congregation. Who's this? Zeh Sanhedrin. This refers to the Sanhedrin Gedela that they have to advise with. The term Eda many times refers to the Sanhedrin. So here, this is the source that you have to advise with the Sanhedrin. But the Gemara asks on this source, Vidilme, how do you know to understand the pasuk this way? Maybe what it's saying is, L'sanhedri hu deka'amalahu. Maybe all it's saying is, not that you have to actually consult with the Sanhedrin. What it's saying is, you can't have any plain individual that decides that he wants to go fight on Milchemes HaReshos and come and ask the question to the Melech or to the Urim V'Tumim. What it's saying is, L'sanhedrin hu deka'amalahu, that it's saying to the Sanhedrin, Rachmana, the Torah is saying, D'l'shayla b'Urim V'Tumim, that they, the Sanhedrin, if they want to go out into war, they have to ask the question to the Urim V'Tumim. But no hedyot, no plain individual can come and ask such a shayla. Maybe that's what it's saying. But not that you actually have to consult with the Sanhedrin themselves. So what's the source for what it says in the Mishnah that before you go out to a Milchemes HaReshos, you have to have the consent of the Sanhedrin HaGadol? So therefore the Gemara brings another source, and here it brings what it says, a story regarding David HaMelech. There was a harp that was hanging above of the bed of David HaMelech. When it came to midnight, a northern wind would blow into the harp, and it would create a melody on its own. Rashi here brings beneged to the winds. There's 4 different winds from the 4 directions that blow during the day. There's the wind in the morning that comes from the east. Then the second half of the day, there's a ruach draimis. There's a southern wind, and then there's the western wind that comes the first half of the night. And then starting from midnight, the second half of the night, there's a northern wind. And the northern wind is a wind that has a very good benefit to it. It's a very good wind. And Rashi brings that the 4 winds follows the direction of the sun as well. That starts in the east and then goes a little bit to the south and then goes to the west. So the winds also come in the same times as the direction of the sun. So at midnight, when the Ruach Tzfainis, the northern wind blows, it would blow into this kinoid of David HaMelech, and then Miyad HaYadavid Oymed VaOisik BaTorah, immediately David HaMelech would get up and he would occupy himself in learning Torah Ad Sha'ala Amud HaShachar, until the morning star would come up. Kivin Sha'ala Amud HaShachar, as soon as the morning would begin, Amud HaShachar, Nichnasu Chachma Yisrael Etzlai, the Chachamim that would come into him. And Amrullah, they said to David HaMelech, Ardeneinu HaMelech, our master the king, Amcha Yisrael Tzrichin LeParnasa, your people, the Yidden, they need Parnasa, they need to make a livelihood. Amalahen, so David HaMelech would answer them and say, go and make a livelihood one from another. If you do business with one each other, a poor person with a rich person, so then you can make commerce and you can do business and make Parnasa. Amrullah, and they responded to David HaMelech and said, it's not enough. Must be a esari. The little that you can put into a fistful is not enough to satisfy a lion. In other words, Klal Yisrael is too large and there's still not enough of Parnasa. And a pit cannot be filled from the earth that you took out from it. If you had a pit that was already empty, and then you take out a little bit more earth, and then you try to fill it completely with that little earth, it's not going to fill up. So Bekitza, they don't have enough to go around in Parnasa amongst Yidden themselves for everybody. So Amalahem, David HaMelech told them, so if so, Luchu Pishtu Yedechem Begedud. So then go out and go attack the armies of the Goyim that are around, and go and plunder and take from them what you need for your Parnasa. So immediately what would they do? They would take advice from Achitophel, which was the advisor. They will consult with the Sanhedrin. Here's the source where we see that before they go out to a Milchama of Rishus, they have to consult with the Sanhedrin. And then they would also ask by the Urim V'Tumim to see if they'll be successful in this war. Now, here we see this is the way it was done. They would consult with the Sanhedrin. Rav Yosef said on this Ma'ikra, what's the source for what it says there? That they would Milchemes HaReshos, correct. So what's the source for this in the pasuk? Because it says Va'achrei Achitophel, after they advised with Achitophel, then B'nyayahu ben Yoyada, they would advise with B'nyayahu ben Yoyada, and he was the leader, the greatest of the Sanhedrin, and Avyasar, and then they would consult with Avyasar, which was a Kayin. They would consult by him, by the Urim V'Tumim, to see if they would be successful. And then it says V'sar Tzava LaMelech Yoyev. Then they would go to the general Yoyev to go out to war. So the Gemara explains it is Achitophel ze Yoyitz. Achitophel was the advisor. The advice of Achitophel, he gave advice regarding whether they should go out to war or not. Now, B'nyayahu ben Yoyada zu Sanhedrin. He's the Sanhedrin because he was the Mufla, he was the leader of the Sanhedrin, the greatest of the Sanhedrin. Avyasar elu urim v'tumim. Avyasar is the Kayin Gadol that has the Urim v'Tumim. And this is what the pasuk says, they would advise by Ben Yehoyada, the greatest of the Sanhedrin. Al means over here before they would come to the Kohen Gadol that has the Urim V'Tumim, and the pasuk here refers to the Urim V'Tumim as Akresi v'Aplesi, Ala Plesi. What does this term of Kresi and Plesi mean regarding the Urim V'Tumim? V'lama nikra shman Kresi u'Plesi. Kresi means Shekarse and Devreim, that the words of the Urim V'Tumim, when the words of the Choshen, the letters of the Choshen would stick out and shine out, it would be very clear cut to see exactly what the message here is. So that's the term Kresi. And Plesi means Shemufla and Masayim, that the way it would give its message was as a wonder. That it was a miracle, a wondrous thing, that it would give out the message if Yidden would be successful or not. And then after they went, they got the advice of Achitophel, and they consulted with the Mufla of the Sanhedrin, and then they got the success that they'll have from the Urim V'Tumim. Then they would go to the general of the army, Yoav, and they would go out to war. Ma'ikra, where is the pasuk for the source of what we said before regarding David HaMelech? They would get up in the morning with the harp that would play a melody in the morning, because the pasuk says, Ura chvaydi, ura nevel v'chinor a'ira shachar. That David HaMelech said about himself that my honor, I should get up, referring to his neshama, that he would wake up in the morning with what? With the nevel and chinor, with the harp that would play the melody, and he would get up in the middle of the night before the shachar, before the morning, before Alois HaShachar. The next thing it said in the Mishnah, ve'ein moisifin ala'ir, if you want to add to the boundary of a city, so then you have to have a bezin of 71. What's the source for this? The pasuk says, just like I show you here today, the structure of the Mishkan. So too, so too in future generations, if you want to add to the Azara, or you want to add to Yerushalayim, just like then, it was according to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu is equivalent to 71, so in future generations, you have to have a bezin of 71. So based on this, Rava asks, if you're saying that everything that we're learning it from the Mishkan, just like by the Mishkan, however it was done the first time they built the Mishkan, in the future, matters of the Mishkan is the same, v'chein tasu, in future generations the same, if so, the question is regarding another subject in the Mishkan. It says as follows: Kol ha'kelim she'asa Moshe, all of the vessels that Moshe Rabbeinu made for the Mishkan, how did they become sanctified? Mishichasam mikachasam, mikachon, that is. It had to be, there was a special anointing oil that they used to anoint each one of the kelim, that it should become sanctified. However, that was Moshe Rabbeinu's generation. Mikan ve'elech, in the future though, avedasam mechanchasam. Once it's used for the aveda in the Beis Hamikdash, that itself is mechanechit, that it becomes holy. But the question though is, why are we saying that future generations are different than the way Moshe Rabbeinu himself originally did it? V'amai, why is this? Name, why shouldn't we say that it says v'chein tasu l'deiris haban? That whatever the way it was done by Moshe Rabbeinu in the Mishkan, in future generations should be done the same way. So the same would be also regarding the kelim of the Beis Hamikdash, that you should have to have a bezin of 71 in order to, or actually in this case, you should have to have the Meshicha. You should have to have the Meshicha of the oil in order to anoint it, to mimikadosh it. And says the Gemara Shani Hasam, regarding using this anointing oil, it's different, because the Amakra, the other pasuk says, Vayim Shachem, Vayikadesh Oisam. He anointed them and he sanctified them. So the word Oisam is an extra word, which is an exclusion. Oisam b'Mashiach, only the Kalim in that generation, you mekadosh them by anointing them, but v'leila dairis b'Mashiach. In future generations, it's not anointed by this Mashiach. It's done just by the Aveda that you're done with it. For example, by the story of Hanukkah, when they came into the Beis Hamikdash and they built a new menorah. The Gemara says they built the menorah that actually wasn't even made out of gold. It was shput and shel barzel. So what was mekadosh to be a menorah again? Just by the Aveda, by lighting the nadis. That's what's mekadosh it. But still, I can say, even though there's an exclusion here, that the kelim by Moshe Rabbeinu, there you must anoint it with that oil. But Uludaitis, in future generations, maybe I would say iba Meshicha, iba Aveda. That it could be either or. It could be either by anointing it with the oil, as the pasuk says, v'chein tasu. This is the way it's done in future generations, or with Aveda, or as it says here, this pasuk, the exclusion Oisam is saying that in the future it can be done just by the Aveda. So how do you know that it cannot be anointed later with this oil? Rav Papa says, Amakra, there's another pasuk that says, Ashi Yisharsu Bam Ba Kodesh, that they do the sharsu, they serve with this within holiness. So in this pasuk, when it says asher yisharsu, it says before v'lakhu as kli ashares asher yisharsu. So it says twice kli ashares and asher yisharsu. What we mean, what it teaches me is hakosov tolan b'sheiros. The pasuk is saying that with sheiros, that by serving with it, that's how it becomes sanctified. So based on this, the Gemara goes back. If so, ella oisam lamali, that exclusion of the word oisam, that extra word, what do I need that drasha for? If I have now this drasha of asher yishar subam, so then that drasha is extra. Says the Gemara, no, it's still not extra, because if lav oisam, if not for that exclusion, hava mineh, maybe I would say that actually when it comes l'daitis, in all future generations, b'mishicha uba vayda. Maybe it actually requires both, that it has to be with the oil that's anointed, but then it's not enough. And it has to also be with the service, actually using it, only then does it become sanctified. The haksiv v'chein tasu, because there is the pasuk of v'chein tasu that sounds like that it should be done this way in the future generations, and then it says asher yisharsu, which I would say only is adding that you have to serve with it as well in order to be sanctified. Therefore, kasev rachmana oisam b'mishicha v'loy l'dairis b'mishicha, that in the future generations you do not use this anointing oil that Moshe Rabbeinu used in his times. Then the Mishnah said, in order to appoint the Sanhedrin, Ketana, that's in every city, who appoints them? Has to be by the Sanhedrin Gedalah of 71. They are the ones that establish the Sanhedrin, the Bezdin in every city. From where do we know this? What is the source for this? We find this by Moshe Rabbeinu, the Oiki Sanhedrais. He is the one that established the Sanhedrin in his times, with the advice of Yisrael. He's the one that established all the judges in his times. So just like Moshe b'makim shivim v'chat koi, Moshe Rabbeinu is equivalent to 71. So therefore, in all future generations, you need a Bezdin of 71 to establish the Bezdin of 23 in every city. Tana Rabbanon, and a Braisa we learned about the Bezdin that has to be established in every city. What's the source for this? That you have to establish judges for the Yidden in every city. So here, Talmud Laima, the pasuk says, Shaftim v'shaytrim, Shaftim, actually the full pasuk says, Shaftim v'shaytrim titn lacha, b'chol sha'arecha. Right, so the Gemara here is actually going to darshan the entire pasuk. Right, it says, Shaftim v'shaytrim titn lacha, b'chol sha'arecha, asher Hashem lekecha noisen lacha l'shvatecha, v'shaftu esa'ah mishpat tzedek. So the Gemara darshans as follows: Shaftim titem. You have to appoint judges, and then shaitrim. So that's the judges. Now shaitrim li Yisrael minayin. How do you know you have to have the officers as well? That are the ones that actually enforce what the Bezdin paskins. Talmud Leima shaitrim titem. So therefore the pasuk goes on to say also shaitrim, and that goes back to what it says in the beginning, that you have to appoint officers. Now, shayvtim l'chol shevet v'shevet minayin. How do I know that you have to have judges for every shevet? Every shevet has to have their bezdin. Talmud leima shayvtim. The pasuk says afterwards l'shvatecha. Has to be judges for every shevet. Shaytrim l'chol shevet v'shevet minayin. How do you know that you have to have the officers for every shevet as well? Talmud leima shaytrim l'shvatecha. When it says shaytrim, it also has to be for every shevet. Now, shayftim l'chol ir v'ir minayin. How do you know you have to have judges for every city? Talmud leima shayftim l'sharecha. That you have to have the judges in the gates of every city. Shaytrim l'chol ir v'ir minayin. How do you know you have to have officers for every city? Talmud leima shaytrim l'sharecha. So the pasuk says that you have to have officers in the gates of every single city. So over here you see that in the Gemara, in the simple pshat of the Gemara, it's saying that you have to have judges in every city, and you also have to have shayftim for every shevet. So according to the Ramban and Chumash, he says that it actually is two separate things. Every individual city needs a bezdin of 23, but then every entire shevet needs its own bezdin of 23. But according to Taisvis, it doesn't mean that every shevet had their own judge. If in one city it was split into two shvatim, so then the city had two bezdins for the two shvatim that were in the same city. But there wasn't necessarily a separate judge, a separate set of judges of 23 for every shevet. Now the Braisa finishes off. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Echad mimuna al kulan." There's one that's appointed above all these bezdins of 23 in all the cities. Shenema titan locha. There has to be one above all of them that's appointing them. According to Rashi, this refers to the Sanhedrin Gedalah that appoints the bezdin of 23 in every city. According to Taisvis, it refers to the Nasi of the bezdin or the Av bezdin that's above all of that, above the bezdin of 23. Rabshim Gamliel dashens the end of the pasuk where it says l'shvatecha, and then it says v'shaftu mitzvah b'shevet ladon eshiftai, that there's a mitzvah for each shevet to go to the judge of their shevet and not to go to be judged by a different shevet. Then the next thing it said in the Mishnah, in order to establish a city.
Every Shevet had.
Every Shevet had their own bezdin, correct. You can't establish a irani dachas unless you have a bezdin of 71. You know, what's the source of this? The Gemara brought it already in Amud Aleph. Amud Abchir by Yosef, Amud Abayishir. The Amakra, the pasuk says, "V'ayteisa seishu, ayseishai." So what we learn from this is, Ish v'isha, if there's one man or one woman, atamaytz l'sharecha. So then, to give them misa, you take them to the bezdin in your cities. But v'atamaytz kol ha'ir kula l'sharecha. But if it's a whole city that served the Avodah Zarah, you don't bring them to the bezdin in the city, but you have to bring them to the bezdin of 71. Then the Mishnah said other details about the irani dachas. Ein oisen irani dachas basfar. Irani dachas cannot be a city that's on the border of Eretz Yisrael. My time, what's the source of this? Because it says mikir becha. If there's a city from within Eretz Yisrael, somewhere in mikir becha, the pasuk says yatsu anoshim b'nei b'liyal mikir becha, but it can't be at the border. But not on the border. Now v'loy shalosh, it says you can't establish 3 cities to be a irani dachas. What's the source for this? T'chsiv achas. It says 1 city. Aval oisin achas oishtayim, but you can establish 1 or 2 cities to be irani dachas because the chsiv orecha. It says achas, 1 city, but then it says orecha, which is actually a plural term, and therefore we know that 2 cities could be established as irani dachas. So the Gemara brings a brayse that says this Tana Rabbanon achas. It says in the pasuk achas. So that means achas only 1 city could be a irani dachas, but v'loy shalish, not 3. So the Brayse explains, you're saying 1 and not 3, or maybe 1 and not 2 cities could be made a irani dachas. But the pasuk uses the plural term of arecha, so that means that it could be 2 cities. So what does it mean? Achas, it means 1 and not 3 cities. Now another halacha regarding the irani dachas, zimnin amar Rav, sometimes Rav said, bebezdin echad hu dein oisen. It's only if it's the same bezdin of 71, they can't establish that there should be 3 cities of irani dachas. Ha b'shnayim v'shloisha bati dinim. But if it's not the same bezdin of 71, those of that original bezdin passed away, and then it was a second bezdin or a third bezdin, oisen. They could establish another city and even 3 cities to be irani dachas. But v'zinin amar Rav, other times Rav said, afilu b'shnayim v'shloisha bati dinim, even if it's 2 or 3 different bezdins of 71, lo oilam ein oisen. You can't establish in Eretz Yisrael 3 cities to be a irani dachas. So my time with the Rav, what's the basis for what Rav is saying? Mishom karcha, because then you create a bald spot in Eretz Yisrael. Because what happens by the irani dachas is it has to be destroyed completely, and that city is never allowed to be built up again. So you're going to have a desolate area in Eretz Yisrael if you have 3 cities that are destroyed. Now about this is machlokes actually. Rish Lakish says, Lo shanu ela b'makom echad. The issue of having 3 cities to be irani dachas, it's only if it's in the same section of Eretz Yisrael. We know Eretz Yisrael is divided by Yehuda, Galil, and the Zever HaYarden. So if it's all in one section of Eretz Yisrael, in Yehuda, for example, then it's a problem. Aval b'shnayim v'shloishim v'kaimis. But if it's in Yehuda and then it's in Galil, if it's in different sections of Eretz Yisrael, oisen. So then you could establish even more cities to be a irani dachas. Rabbi Yechanan says, no, ain't oisen, even if it's in different sections of Eretz Yisrael, you can't establish 3 cities to be a irani dachas mishum karcha. Still, there is still this issue that you're causing this bald spot in Eretz Yisrael, these areas that are not going to be desolate. Tan, you can say that Rabbi Yechanan, we learned in the Brayse like Rabbi Yechanan, where it says, ein oisen shalosh hayadais menudachais b'Eretz Yisrael. You can't establish 3 cities to be a irani dachas in Eretz Yisrael. Aval oisen oisam shtayim, but you could have 2 cities to be irani dachas. Kagoin achas beYehuda va'achas beGalil. If one of those cities is in one section in Yehuda and another is in Galil, so this is actually more than what we said before. Before it said that you could establish 2, even if it sounded like even in the same area. But here it's saying even 2 has to be in 2 different areas. If you have 2 cities in Yehuda or 2 in Galil, ein oisen, you cannot establish them as a irani dachas. So you see here, like Rabbi Yechanan, that even when it comes to 2 cities, you can't establish them. Even 2 in Galil, 2 in Yehuda. So definitely, if it comes to 3, you can't establish them, even if it's in different areas. Now, smuchen l'sfar afila achas. A city that's right by the border, you can't make it a irani dachas, even if it's just 1 city. What's the reason? My time, Shema Yishmu Nachrim, because Goyim will hear that there's a border city that was destroyed, that's desolate. V'yachriva is Eretz Yisrael, and they'll come into there, and then they'll cause a destruction in Eretz Yisrael. Now the Gemara asks, but before we brought a pasuk for this, typically the mikir b'cha Omer Achmana. Why didn't he learn out from what it says in the pasuk mikir b'cha that only a city within Eretz Yisrael could be established as a Yirani Dachas v'leimen asfar, not a city on the border. Answers the Gemara, Rab Shimoni, this Bryce is the opinion of Rab Shimon, the Dorish, Taime the Kra. He's learning it from that pasuk Mikir B'cha, but he darshans the reason of the pasuk. Rab Shimon always holds that you darshan the reasons, and this is the reason, in order for Goyim not to come and destroy Eretz Yisrael.